Will working people want the massive apparatus of management and administrators to tell them what to do? Those roles constitute 23.8 million jobs. Lawyers, paralegals, and legal assistants who manage the conflicts that are inevitable in a society where all is set against all, that's another 1.078 million. People whose job it is to simply buy and sell goods, wholesale trade, that's 5.8 million jobs, just buying and selling things. Those who work in retail, which right now, very clearly an essential job, but in the future when workers have control over everything, are they going, is this the most efficient way to get what we need? Do we need to go to a store where people spend all day presenting objects in a way that make it look more interesting to buy? Retail trade is really, at this point, it only exists as a means of marketing. And George Monbiot, for instance, argued that if you got rid of supermarkets and you simply had goods distributed right to people's homes, that would actually save 90% of the fossil fuel energy that goes into us buying groceries. So if we were to move from a system of retail trade to just simply delivering goods because we're buying things to live, we're not living to buy things, well, that's 15.8 million jobs. And in manufacturing, 1.2 million workers work on military production, 1 million are in auto industry. This is out of 12 million workers. Other workers are simply consumed with changing the way that products look so that they can be marketed differently. One study in the 1950s found that 25% of auto production went into simply changing the looks of car models that had already been created. And then there's a million other goods that we have to wonder whether workers would decide to continue making or not. But even leaving that aside, and even assuming that about 10 million, about the work equivalent of 10 million managers is still useful for something or other, it would still be necessary one way or other, I have just named 57.68 million jobs out of 128 million. And that's after we've already talked about people having a right to a home, to food, to healthcare, to education, and to transportation. What kind of society could we create if we were to give ourselves jobs in some areas that were different than those? I mean, just as some examples, there's only 1.1 million doctors. There's only 3.9 million nurses right now. There's only 68,000 dietitians and nutritionists. EMTs and paramedics, only 262,000. How could we turn society upside down? Waste management, 432,000. We could go on with this for a while, but I want to deal with one other question here. Because right now we've just looked at wasted labor, at least wasted from perhaps a future society's vantage point in the United States. But what is the cost of the conflict between countries in capitalism? Capitalism means bringing the world closer and closer together by integrating production more and more, but at the same time setting all against all under the leadership of private exploiters. This means, for instance, that innovation does not cross between countries, does not cross between corporations. It means that, like right now, it means trade wars, it means patent wars. So for instance, just take one example. If Chinese workers were working using American technology, their increase in production would double world output. If the 200 million people who are unemployed worldwide, meaning they don't have work but they're looking for it, if they went to work with American tech, they would quadruple global output. If they became scientific researchers, they would increase the number of scientific researchers worldwide 25-fold, meaning 25,000%. If they only went to work in areas regarding human need, they would likely increase this some 250-fold, or 250,000%. Now, I know there are horror stories running through your mind, but this kind of productive potential in the hands of workers does not mean that it will be used in the same way as it is under capitalism. Again, we can choose how we do this. Right now we're looking at the new society through a quantitative lens, meaning we have to look at it through the standard of measurement we have in the old society. But let's talk a bit about what the new standard of measurement might be in the new society. It can mean working less. It could mean putting more people to work and cleaning up the world. Most certainly towards stopping climate change or slowing climate change and other environmental catastrophes, or towards preparing for other climate catastrophes. Socialist planning means it is possible to plan and create for overall use value, not just individual use value. In capitalism, even in simple commodity production, the vantage point of rationality is the individual. How can I get to work faster? Well, I need to buy a car. How can I be healthier? In socialist planning, the vantage point of rationality is the society as a whole. How can we get to where we want to go in the least amount of time, in the most pleasant way, with the least labor, with the least use of resources? And then, how does this transportation structure affect other things we value, like our health? Transit, for instance, could be designed to deal with infectious diseases to a degree even. It could take into account climate change. Socialism means dramatically increasing the number of people and amount of time spent on useful labor while increasing the productivity of that labor. It also means qualitatively reducing the amount of resources used and the amount wasted. And it means dramatically increasing the number of people and time committed to reducing, reusing, and recycling. And it means planning that reuse and recycling from the beginning. It means not waiting until after a product has been created to figure out what to do with it. It means a far saner arrangement where reusing is far more feasible, repairing is far more feasible, and recycling is far more feasible. And the global commitment to undoing the harm wrought to our habitat by capitalism will be essential in binding together a new global society. Socialism means needs become rights and luxuries become gifts. Labor increasingly is performed for the love of the activity and the love of the recipients. So reception of a luxury or gift creates an imbalance between giver and receiver. This imbalance means the relationship between the two must continue, or the relationship between both and the society must continue. Gifts tie people together. The employment of luxury goods and services becomes not a measure or symbol of one's personal greatness, but of one's connection to the society, of love received by others, and of one's debt to society. Socialism means developing the entire lifespan of a good. It means we move from producing commodities to producing use values. Instead of measuring how many cars we make, we measure how much time it takes us to get to our destinations. We move from producing things to managing processes. We move from managing people to managing processes. And production ever more resembles the act of tending to an ever-shifting garden. To get there means waging a struggle for power. It means ending the rule of capital, and preparing the ground for that struggle is our task today. Thank you.